This is an introduction to the SRM section of our new total dungeon completion route. In this video I will not talk about how to execute stuff, but rather what the SRMs actually do. I will explain the idea behind it. The thing is, the route is not actually finished yet. I have worked out all the SRM, but what's left is everything that comes after. Yeah, completing the dungeons, a detailed route inside the dungeons, the movement strategies, but also the dungeon order in general. The difference with this route is that we will have moon boots, and those just give us so many new possibilities. And this video is supposed to give you some of the information you need if you want to help routing. I will make a second video in which I will give you some examples of route options and what a route could actually look like. But for now, let's get to the video. This video starts from second cycle. In first cycle we just bought Bornberg, and the first thing after becoming human was hitting the South Clocktown Owl. That is because this route uses Throng Warps soaring to this owl. Then we got a bomb drop in Termina Field, and we are currently setting up Chest SRM. The items we get from Chest SRM are Great Fairy Mask, Zora Mask, Base Deity Mask, Bornberg 40, 4 sets of Bomb Shoes, Goron Mask, Chateau, Stone Mask, Hookshot, Song of Soaring, Gilded Sword, and the Wind Medallion. That is a glitched item which is the C button fire arrows. As I said, I will not explain the execution of the SRM in this video. Once we have a complete route, I will make a full tutorial, but my commentary in this video will continue after Chest SRM. So unless you want to see the individual Chest SRM setups, you can skip ahead. Alright, the next thing we are going to do is our first position setup for a Lightnote SRM. The setup is done in East Termina Field, and it's also the reason why we got Stone Mask, otherwise the real bomb juice would mess with us. This setup is for glitching the Giant's Chamber pointer, so when we will step into a blue warp, we will not actually be sent to the Giant's Chamber, but somewhere else. Where we are sent is based on data on the actor heap, which we will set up at the end of the SRM section, so I will explain it in a little bit more detail when we come to that. After every position setup, we store our respawn data with the night or day transition, and this respawn data contains the coordinates and facing angle of Link. So when the game reloads the scene after the transition, the game knows where to put Link. That is what the data is normally used for. But we abuse this data a little bit for our SRM shenanigans. For Lightnote SRM, we always need to set up data, and based on the data, the Lightnote SRM does different things. In practice, usually we use the data of the Y coordinate, Z coordinate, and facing angle. The next setup will be for moon boots, and it is one of the rare exceptions where we only use the Z coordinate and the facing angle. Also important to note is that the respawn data is stored to different places in memory, depending on the kind of transition. After this position setup in Termina Field, we have a Song of Double Time night transition, but for the next setup we get a day transition. These are the two ways in which we can store respawn data, so we always do two position setups, and then we do a Lightnote heap setup to make use of the data. And until the heap setup, I also don't really have anything to say, so if you like, you can skip ahead. Now comes the heap setup, and because the wall and balloon and the hideout are gone, we can actually do a really fast heap setup. Now we get the angle to use the data we set up in Termina Field to glitch the blue warps. And then we just walk into the tunnel to load hideout, and then we walk back into observatory again, unloading the hideout. And we will not actually drop the SRM just yet. With the SRM we manipulate one of the torches in the hideout, and the light node SRM triggers when the torch unloads. Now we get another angle to make use of the data for moon boots, and this time we can let go of the SRM since there isn't any more data that we can make use of. Currently Link still has his normal physics, but as soon as you load a new scene or reload the scene or use a transformation mask and then transform back to human, the game uses the moon boots physics. And that's actually a good thing that we don't have the physics activated yet, because we still need to do one more position setup, and doing that with moon boots is pretty annoying. We now do a double position setup for glitching the entrance of the South Clocktown Owl, but also the entrance where you enter South Clocktown from inside the clock tower. So warping to the owl will then not actually warp you to the owl, it will actually look at the last byte of the Z coordinate. So with that we can warp to any scene. I don't want to go into the technical details why we need to glitch the entrance of South Clocktown coming from inside the clock tower, but if we didn't glitch that entrance as well, then we couldn't do chain wrong warps. Chain wrong warps are the ones where you void out or die or something like that, and then you respawn in a totally different scene. And that is actually quite important for this category. Unless someone has a really good idea for a route without chain wrong warps, but that will be quite tricky. But it is actually really fast to glitch both these entrances back to back, because they require the same position setup, only the angle needs to be different. So after the position setup we get one of the angles that we need, and then we play Song of Double Time and store that position, and then while still standing at the same coordinates, we just get a different angle and play Song of Double Time again. Now comes the light node heap setup again, and it is pretty much the same as earlier, except that now we have moon boots, and I think one of the angles is different if I remember correctly, but that's about it. The last thing we need to set up is the data for the Giant's Chamber. As I mentioned earlier, when we step into the blue warp and the game would normally load the Giant's Chamber, it will now look at data on the actor heap instead. So we are now doing yet again a position setup. I swear this is the last position setup, except for the wrong warps where the game looks at your Z position. But other than that, that's really it. And once we have the right position, we will let 3 bombs explode. And when the bombs explode, there is a smoke actor loading, and the data of the 3rd smoke actor is what we are interested in. For the first 2 blue warps, the game looks at data that we cannot really control. The first blue warp will always send us to Twin Islands in spring, and the second blue warp will always send us to Purified Swamp. The data for the 4th blue warp is determined by the Y coordinate of the smoke, and we need it to be either 6700 or 9B00. That will send us to Lost Woods, playing the final credits cutscene. So after we beat the last dungeon boss, we just step into the blue warp and we get credits warp. Fighting Majora is fortunately not required in this category, so that credit swap is super convenient for total dungeon completion, as well as for all dungeons that also uses the same credit swap. Now for the data for the 3rd blue warp, we have some options. I initially wanted to use it to warp to a fairy fountain, but that unfortunately crashes, I guess because the game tries to load an invalid cutscene or whatever. So we cannot use it for wrong warps to fairy fountains, and we cannot use it to warp to dungeons either, because then we couldn't do the chain wrong warps. We need to warp with Song of Soaring to the dungeons. So the best option we have is probably warping to a dungeon boss. Now I have a rough route idea that follows mostly the old route before we had moon boots. For those who haven't seen that, I will link it in the description. In the old route, we did a chain wrong warp from Woodfall Temple to Goat, and we did a simple boss key skip in Great Bay Temple, so the bosses remaining are Odolwa and Twinmold. In the setup I currently have, it warps us to Odolwa, so at the end of the run you would first fight Twinmold, then the blue warp at Twinmolds would send you to Odolwa, and then the Odolwa blue warp would warp you to the credits. But yeah, nothing is set in stone yet. So that's for this video. I will try to make the second video soonish, TM-ish. I cannot promise anything. But yeah, in the second video, I will explain the physics of moon boots and some options that we have for moon boots to maybe design them a little bit differently. And I will explain the wrong warps and chain wrong warps and how you can tell where a wrong warp will take you. I will talk a lot about room numbers, which room the game tries to load and at which coordinates a chain wrong warp would take you. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Alright, see ya.